Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 163, and we're going to be interviewing Kelly G. How you doing, Kelly?
Hi, very well, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm excited to do this. What about you? You excited?
Excited, nervous, anxious.
All right, good. It's good to be excited. And like I said before, sometimes it's good to be anxious and nervous. It means you care, right?
hmm
So let's get started here. It's nice and easy. Tell me about your childhood and growing up. Start from the beginning.
My childhood. I think I was born. No, I was born. I was born in Brooklyn. A long time ago, 54 years ago, 1968. And then, as a young child, we moved to Long Island, with typical Brooklyn at the time. Um, my parents were, my parents were together. I have an older sibling. But we are Irish, of Irish descent. Well, we're here a million years, but typical Irish family where every holiday involved alcohol. It was it was the norm. I didn't know any better. It was just what we did. We were always every holiday, Easter, Thanksgiving. There was always like a special holiday or a special cocktail rather for each holiday. Like Thanksgiving would be pink lemonade, daiquiris kind of thing. And one of my earliest memories of moving to our home in Long Island was my parents having a party that lasted like 3 days long.
Mhm.
And I think back now how incredibly irresponsible that was. That we were young children, and they must have been just partying around the clock, and nobody, I can't even recall who was watching us. I remember someone, like some of the friends, my parents' friends, giving us money, like, oh, here's $5, which in those days was like $1 million as far as we were concerned. Um, but again, my parents not educated. My mother had a high school diploma. She was a secretary in a middle school in Long Island. My father, I would say, looking back, was probably learning disabled, dyslexic maybe, because he is not a high school. He did not graduate high school, but he was a very hard worker, and he worked for sanitation. Then he was injured, and then do after that. Oh, then he had a trucking company, a leasing company that but it was not. I don't think it wasn't on the road, over the road rather. And again, I grew up, like typical middle class, except I do know, and I was pretty much aware of it at the time too, that my family drank more than others. Like I had friends from other um, cultures. I don't know if that's the correct word. I mean, and I also grew up in a pretty white neighborhood. There was no diversity except for you were either Italian, Irish, or Jewish, maybe. Nothing. There was no other difference at the time. But I was very aware of that. So what do you want now? Is that enough?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Do you want like my history of when I started drinking or
Well, keep going through childhood. So, okay, let me ask you this. How was your school life?
my school life was it's interesting because I was thinking about I had another meeting this afternoon at work, and we're having some trainings about diversity training, actually, diversity and inclusion. And I never felt secure as a kid. I always was very insecure, I think, about my looks, about my family, about, I have freckles, and, I just had a million insecurities. I was probably anorexic. In fact, I know I was anorexic. I barely ate. And in high school, I was a decent student. I could have been I should have been a lot better because I'm quite bright and intellectual, intelligent, whatever. I'm being very intellectual now. Um, but sorry. But I didn't have like I said, I never really felt that I fit in. One thing I should probably say, my older brother, who is 2.5 years older than I am, he had a stutter, which back in the 70s, this is, I think, really like the root of a lot of my family issues came from, is my brother's stutter. And back then, I work in education now. I've been working in education for 20 something years. But back then, they did not define it as any kind of a disorder. They basically said you're a shitty parent and that's why he stutters. So that's what was told to my mother. Instead of going to a speech therapist or something along those lines, they sent her to a therapist, and the therapist had told her, yeah, you're a shitty mom, you're a bad mother, and that's why he stutters, which is, again, looking back, is just horrific, and I can remember a big joke in my family, joke, quote unquote, where my father, everything my brother, if we would stutter, we're also very twisted senses of humor. We don't hold back anything. Nothing is sacred, basically. And if my brother would stutter, my father would say, "Oh, you don't stutter anymore. I paid $10,000 to have that fixed," and we didn't have any money, So I remember that. And again, he went to the psychologist who said my mother was a bad mother, and I think that just shut her down. My mom was, her dad died when she was 7. Her mom died the day after she turned 20. So like her sister raised her. She got married right, or she eloped with my dad. And my father was, definitely an alcoholic back in those days. But I think right that moment when they told her that is when everything in our lives changed. At that point, my mother just, I guess, the guilt she felt, and I agreeably so, because that's what you're being told. And again, she's not educated. She never went to college, and that was kind of the theory back then. So that, I think, really changed a lot in our lives, because then everything, from that moment on, everything became about my brother. I mean, everything. It was just about my brother, about my brother, about my brother. And, a lot of time, a lot of things I can understand. He was bullied, he was picked on, made fun of. And I can remember being, young adult, I guess, probably like 18, 19. And I was dating one of his friends and he was dating one of my friends. And I remember we'd be hanging out and probably doing, I think actually we're doing coke at the time, if I'm going to be brutally honest here. I can remember him trying to speak, and his stutter was the pain I felt watching it, because you can't correct it, you can't do anything, and he was really embarrassed by it. Didn't stop him from talking, but I mean, which is a good thing. But at the time, he was, the industry he was in, he was working in commodities in downtown Wall Street, New York, and he never really was able to go any higher because of the speech impediment, because you'd have to buy, sell, whatever they're doing, screaming all day. He just wasn't going to be capable of that. And then everything went to shit, and the commodities all crashed anyway, and they sold all the seats, and everything went electronic. But so I can remember a lot of things like my mother would do for my brother, and things in my, as I got older, in my, in my, I got married young. I got pregnant at 20 and got married. And, I married a good guy, so I thought at the time. But I can remember, I went back to work when my younger son was 2. And, and I got promoted. I took, I moved jobs a couple of times, and I would get promoted each time to a bigger position, more money. Oh, you're stopping me?
Yeah, hold on one second. I was going to ask you.
Okay.
So going back a little bit to high school, so you said a lot of what you're growing up, you remember being about your brother.
Yeah.
So besides that, how was your high school experience? At what age? Because you mentioned doing cocaine. What age did you first use anything at all?
I think I mean, cigarettes, I started probably young, way too young. And again, both of my parents were smokers, so it was easy for me
What's
to,
way too young? How old do you think?
probably in my world, it was way too young, 14, 15. I mean, I
Okay.
know Rory's much younger, but for me, that was really young. And I still smoke, unfortunately, today. Um, I think my brother was a big, big pot smoker. And again, a lot of these things as an adult and being in recovery, I can make sense of a lot of this a lot more. But my brother was a big pot smoker. When the
Did the
cigarette,
marijuana did the marijuana help the stuttering?
I really can't say for sure, because I don't know. Maybe, or I think it's, my brother also fell in with the crowd of, like, I guess you would say, kind of misfits. Um, they're the ones that smoke. But you know what? They weren't misfits in a terrible way, but they weren't, jocks, and they weren't scholars. And they were a great bunch of guys. So it really worked, for him. But and this was the pot smoking crowd. But you know what? They accepted him, stutter and everything, and that I guess was the most important factor. And I think he's probably, I know he's still friends with one of them, still really close. But yeah, so when I started smoking, it was easy because my parents smoked, so I would just steal their cigarettes. And, I guess I don't know why I started, because I thought it was cool, maybe, or because I had cigarettes. And, maybe actually, when I think about it more, I think it's because I could get cigarettes and I was like, oh, I have cigarettes. Do you want to smoke cigarettes? Maybe I know I was always seeking attention looking back now. I was always seeking attention, not necessarily like negative attention, like a negative is better than no attention. Any attention is better than no attention. It wasn't like that. It was just, I had, maybe because of, like I said, how um, my brother was not, I don't want to say favored, but he was favored by my mother, absolutely. Um, and maybe because of that, that's why I was constantly seeking attention and like, I'm trying to fit in somewhere. And I didn't always fit in. I never felt, I still today don't feel, comfortable in my own skin. But I think when I probably smoked pot, I know I smoked pot in eighth grade once or twice. And it wasn't, I think we got like someone sold us like oregano and we thought we smoked pot, we were like, and and of course my father caught us because my father happened to be home one morning. He hadn't gone to work yet. And I remember we went to the park under the bridge and a car pulls up and it was my father of all people. And my father was a big guy, big scary dude. He was a pussycat, but he was a big scary dude. And then that was it. So I don't, punished for the rest of my life, whatever. I just got caught smoking cigarette. I was young, too young for this shit. If I only knew. And then, again, I really didn't smoke it that young. And I think I was like in maybe 10th grade, 11th grade. The one people I was friendly with, the one girl I was friendly with, close to my best friend at the time, was a heavy pot smoker. And so is our little group. So I smoked it. I didn't, I never liked it. I didn't like how it made me feel. Listen, I'm a great alcoholic all day long, but drugs, I just never really made me feel. Pot always made me feel weird. Like, what do I do with my arms? I have light eyes. They were always like bright red. And I never enjoyed that high. It just wasn't for me. And so I think about my little pot smoking career was done by before I was a senior in high school. I just didn't care for it. But that's when I probably started drinking alcohol, regularly. More?
Yeah, continue. And if you have more, keep going. There's no
Um,
limit here.
I don't know. I don't normally talk about my childhood, even in therapy. I never, well, a little bit. But I guess that's, what started my drinking. And my drinking, right from the get-go, first time I drank, I got shit-faced drunk, throwing, I got caught too. I was never very good at anything. I was, not a good liar, not very good at hiding things, always got in trouble, always got caught. But
How old were you the first time you started drinking?
I say ninth grade, however old you are in ninth grade, 14,
14, usually 14, right?
something like that. Yeah. Excuse me. So I forgot what I was saying. Oh, so the first time I was drinking, it was when I drank a couple, yeah, once or twice at that age, but it wasn't a regular thing until probably like 11th grade, maybe 11th grade, 12th grade, absolutely. And again, my one friend that I was really close to was not a great student. So she cut class all the time, and me, the perpetual follower, wanting to be wanting to be loved and liked, I would cut class with her. And I knew, and I was always aware of what I was doing was wrong. And I was a good student, and I knew, but then it would get to the point where you'd be cut so many times, you're so freaking far behind. And that it all blows up. And then you're like, then you're fucked, basically. Am I allowed to curse? Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Um, but, uh, but yeah, so I guess I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be going with all this. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no. So, no, I just want to know like the first time you used. Obviously, you
Oh,
answered that. It was around ninth grade you started drinking. So, and you said an 11th and 12th is when it got more heavy.
well, probably 12th grade. It was more regular. I never drank during the week or anything. But I was a beer drinker back then, which makes me laugh now because I've hated beer, my entire adult life. And I'm not a cocktail drinker either. Mostly I'm a wino. Very good wine though, with very expensive taste, mind you, when I can't afford it. Um, but yeah, we would drink on the weekends, and it was funny. Like they would have those little tiny Budweisers. We used to call them quickies. The little ones, like I don't know what that's. They still make them, and like we would be going out on a Friday night with our friends, guys that were older than us, and had cars and whatever. And we'd go in the little store. It was like a place like in a not an outskirts neighborhood, like almost near the city. And they would sell us these little beers, and we would drink them all. And typical when I was thinking about that, or I'm trying to think of what I was going to talk about today, and that was one of the things I was thinking about. My memory isn't great because of all the trauma I've suffered, and it's really a problem. But things are starting to come back the longer I'm in recovery, and the more I'm working through therapy. But I remember even then, I always drank until it was gone. Like the silly things like when Martha Stewart make ice cubes with your leftover wine, like leftover wine. Fucking kidding me? Like what? Why would you have leftover wine? I mean, it just never. It was. I always drank alcoholically. It was always a binge for me. It was never just have a glass of wine with dinner. Maybe when my kids were very little, possibly, but for the most part, when I got pregnant, I was, drinking heavy, really heavy. I was, really kind of floundering. I was like kind of going to college and community college part time, working whatever random, shit job I could get for a little extra money, and that money was for drinking and partying. And I had like big aspirations, and I would talk a big game about, oh, I'm going to go to, because my major was computer science at the time. And, I mean, I, I was probably hungover every time I went to class, and it was local. It was driving from home. It wasn't, and like looking back, I had zero ambition, zero, just, I mean, I had big ideas and ambition, but I wasn't following through on anything. And my ex-husband, who I was with at the time, same thing. He was working at a Chinese restaurant. When I got pregnant, we got married. My father got him a really good job where he ended up with the rest of his career. But all right, now what? I feel like I'm going. I don't know where I'm going.
No, you're doing fine. So you said once you graduated, you went into college for a little bit.
Very briefly, yeah. Right after high school, I went to college. But I never took SATs. I never even considered that I would go away to college. It just was never something I thought about. We weren't educated people. Um, and I mean, in my parents' defense, I was a little bit. I mean, I wasn't terrible. Like my brother was a fucking handful. I was a pain in the ass. Like I said, my problem was being truant, and it was more just because I was hanging out with my friend, and like we would do nothing. We would drive around, we would go to the beach, we would go. It was never any reason. Or we would like be truant in the morning because she would come to my house, and then she would like sleep in the next room, in the bedroom, wherever, whatever, the couch or whatever. And we would sleep for a couple of hours, then go to school late. It was never anything exciting. But again, looking back, she was not a very good student. She would, even when she would try, she would fail. Horribly fail. So so yeah, that was, I forgot. Oh, and Coke, I did Coke again very shortly. I mean, and the only reason I would do Coke is so I could drink more. That's not a high I like the feeling of. I don't like that buzzy feeling. And I would smoke way too many cigarettes when I would do it, and then I would have a sore throat, and I'd feel miserable from it for days and days. But the only reason I did it was so I could sober up a little bit and drink more. For me, it's always been about drinking more. Um, and again, by the time I was, like 20, I was pregnant, got married, had a baby.
Were you
Um,
able to quit drinking and everything for the pregnancy?
Totally, yeah. Back then, I probably was. I don't. Looking back, I know it was alcoholic drinking, or what do they call that? Substance abuse, something, I don't know. But I wasn't an alcoholic yet. I don't think, because I could not drink. I would not drink all week. But I don't think there was very many weekends I didn't drink. But when I got pregnant, it was no problem. I just didn't drink. It was fine. And then I nursed my children for a really long time, so I didn't drink then. After it wasn't until after my kids were a little older that I started really drinking heavy. I can remember my son was 13, around 13, maybe 14. And um, he was just starting with the smoking pot and cigarettes, and it was My son was one of those go big or go home, like he would go from 0 to 100 with getting in trouble. Um, but the nicest kid you'll ever meet in your life. So I remember back early on that I knew I was drinking too much, but I still didn't think it was problematic. My house was clean. I was holding a great job. I took good care of my children. I fed, I didn't, and I've always struggled at the time, my whole life until very recently I didn't understand how my drinking affected other people, which is ridiculous because I came from an alcoholic home. And I remember one night my son said, you better not drink tonight because I think I made him, we had a deal, whatever. He would stop smoking pot, now, whatever it was. And of course I drank, I didn't drink a bottle of wine like it became years later, but like I had a couple glasses of red wine and he came home and I hid it, behind the couch, whatever. My husband was like, you don't have to fucking do that. We don't answer to him, blah, 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 which was also a red flag with my husband. And I remember my son asking my younger son, who they're 6 years apart, so he was like 7 or 8 at the time, did mommy drink tonight? Did you see her having any wine? And that should have been stopped me in my tracks, that my 13-year-old son was genuinely bothered by my drinking. I can just shut this down now. But it didn't, it didn't at that point either. It just was like I said, it was more to me, it was a nuisance that he was giving me shit for it, when he was just starting his journey with his fateful journey, unfortunately. Now what? What do you want now? Keep going? But
Yeah, like I
like,
said, you just keep going. If just tell your story. So at what point for you, let me ask you this, did you say you think you had a problem?
um, I think I knew it was becoming problematic when yeah, it wasn't alcohol. I was not an alcoholic. Maybe I've always been an alcoholic. I'm not really sure how they diagnose when you're an alcoholic. Are you born with it? There's a million different theories. But I know when my kids were probably, Daniel was a little older. It's probably like maybe like 10 and 16 maybe. And I was up at my best friend's house. And I spent the weekend there, and I was coming home, after lunch that day, and we had a glass of red wine with lunch. And when I had to leave, shortly thereafter. And all I can remember is thinking, I want another glass of wine. I mean, I really fucking want another glass of wine. Desperately, I want a glass of wine, another one. And of course, I didn't because I had to drive, 2.5 hours to get home. And then I remember the guy I was seeing, yeah, they must have been a little older, 13 maybe, I can't remember, 12. Daniel was my little one. Um, and the guy I was seeing at the time, and I remember like talking to him, like, we were kind of like just starting to date. And I was like, I think I have a problem, whatever. And he was like, no, 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 it's no big deal. Like, I wanted to have another glass of wine. And my friends did the same thing at the time, two people that gave me more shit than anybody later on about my drinking. But and then the shit got really bad. Well, my father also throughout this, my father had a massive stroke when he was 49. And my oldest son was just about 2, maybe not even 2. When it maybe he would, yeah, it was just about almost 2, I think. Maybe I don't remember how old he was, but he was young. Maybe he just turned 1, maybe. Um, and and my father was what the old expression, like he was built like a brick shit house. He was a big dude. He was,
Yeah.
man, and but he was a big pussy cat. He was wonderful. And the stroke just like fucking floored it. That was it. I mean, he went from, a viral, strong man, to like basically an old man, like overnight. He was paralyzed on his left side, and he was okay for a first year, a couple of years, but he just got progressively sicker. Like a couple of years after the stroke, a few years, he started having really bad seizures. Which was a whole other nightmare of, having to deal with that because, I was still home. I was home with I was still living at the house. My parents dormered the home when I had my kids, when I had my older one. And, we built us a beautiful apartment. We paid everything. We've never taken from anyone. That's not who I am. But so that became like, I was still home with my younger son was still, a baby. So I helped take care of him. And I wasn't like a terrible thing, but, I did whatever I could to help, because it was my dad and I didn't want, and it was difficult, but I was young. I didn't feel the stress of it or, how I would have later on. Um, I forgot where I was going with that. I don't know. Oh, so anyway, this is all this. And then my father ended up, a million different things over the years. Then he had pancreatic cancer, which, they gave him 3 months to live. I think he lived almost 5 years, 5 miserable, horrible years that we're almost sorry. We had, they did a surgeon, they did a dissection. There's a Whipple pancreatic cancer, and there's a dissection, resection. That's the one my father did. And it was like, what's supposed to be 7 hours of surgery ended up being like 10 or 11. There was just the tumor was wrapped around his insides, and then he had a carotid artery, just a million different things. And the last couple of years of his life were just misery, absolute. I mean, he was so sick. It was zero quality of life. And during this time, this is when my older son, Kenny, had started developing a drug problem, and my marriage was going to shit. It was like everything was just, I had this great, great life. I guess I was 2008. I guess I was just about 40. And that period, like in my late 30s to 40, my son was really starting with the drugs, and then I found out he had a coke problem, and it just kept coming. He had a coke problem, he had the smoking the pot, drinking. Never much of not a heavy drinker, but he drank, and he drank excessively, and he would always get sick, and he would be, he was in. I had to put a PINS petition on him. You know what that is? Person in need of supervision.
No.
I basically had to take my son to court to get him into treatment, because you have to, treatment is voluntary, unless it's by the courts, really. But, as a human being, as a person, an adolescent, I could not make him go to rehab. So I had to take him to court, and they were going to put him in some shitty state program, that he was going to be miserable in, and it was not going to be a nice place. And finally, at the last minute, I was able to convince him, hey, look, I'm going to let you go to date treatment. You'll go there every day. You'll get your schoolwork done. You'll still graduate with your high school, with your high school degree, the same school that you go to. And, you get your act together and whatever. And that's what he did. So finally he did that. Where was I going with? Right before that, that's when shit was really hitting with him. He was like not going to school, and he was failing everything. And and again, looking back, if I'd known what I know now, how I would have done things different. And I did everything I could think of to help that kid, except not stopping drinking. Which is, when I also, there was also a moment when my kids were, the little one was about 2 or 3, when my parents were married 35 years, and I threw them this big, huge anniversary party, which, was really nice to do. I paid for it myself. My brother, of course, gave me his random $150, whatever crap he could give me at the time. And it was an open bar. So much alcohol was drank that evening that they had to go out and get like more beer and like more vodka. It was they drank, these people, they're drinkers. My family are drinkers, and their friends are drinkers. And it was insane how much alcohol they consumed. And after the party, we went back to my mom's house, and my father fell, because he fell, not that off, but he fell off because he was paralyzed. But when he was drinking, forget it, he was just, nothing, like a jellyfish. And his friends were trying to get him up, and they were falling. It was just a fucking shit show. And it was like at a really nice restaurant, and I really wanted it to be a really different type of event. I didn't want that to happen, And even if I did it, even if I had a cash bar, it would have still happened. These people, money isn't the object. It's about the alcohol and, whatever. And I remember saying to my mom, I was upset. I was devastated. And I'm like, this is not what I want. This is supposed to be different. And my mother just said to me, I don't understand, because this is who we are. And I remember thinking, this is who you are. This is not who I am. And it was like an epiphany when I knew, this is fucked up. This is not how people live their lives. It can be different. And yet I didn't stop drinking. I did nothing. You know what I mean? That's when the awareness came. And at that point, I'm like, wow, I drink, but I don't have a problem. You know what I mean? I wasn't that heavy into it. But then when I got separated from my husband, I bought a 2-family house with my parents, because we sold the house and I bought a 2-family house. My father was really, really sick at the end, and my mom needed help. She just couldn't do it alone. And I was really struggling. I was finally getting away from the fucking miserable marriage where I would find he would just shit-faced drunk and he would start fights with my older son. It was a mess. Or that I caught him selling coke once, my husband. It was just, things were not always good, you know. Even when I turned, like I said, when I moved to the new house with my parents and my kids, you know, my oldest son was staying with my mother-in-law, his grandmother, and I thought everything was going to be so different and great. But you know, again, back to that moment, so many years earlier, I knew that this was not the life I wanted for my kids and for myself, and yet I did nothing about it. You know, I did. I mean, I knew. I gave my husband plenty of shit for drinking. But again, I wasn't as bad then. But once I moved in with my parents, and my son was at this point, you know, drug addict, whatever, not a drug addict, but he was seriously abusing drugs, bad. And my father was dying, and my husband was a drunken fucking asshole. And that's when I really started drinking and living with my mom. My mom is an alcoholic. She died of cirrhosis. Big shock there, right? Irish family. And so I was drinking with my mom, you know, every night. And, you know, it was just fucked up. Everything was so fucked up. And then I get a call January 8th. My son was 20. You know, things had gotten much better. He, you know, graduated. He was working. He was doing really well. I mean, he was still smoking pot, which, you know, I gave him shit for, and I wouldn't let him smoke it at my house. And if I, you know, once I found it in his coat at my house, I was going to throw it out. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to, he doesn't live here. He's not going to smoke it here, whatever. And I didn't. And then he was doing well. He got a job working full time, you know, and he loved it because he, you know, he was working in sales, and you know, every drug addict can work in sales because you know they know how to get what they want. You know what I mean? Absolutely, you
I'm in
understand.
sales.
Yep. And he we got very close over that summer, and he had a girlfriend that I loved and loved until about a year ago, actually. And you know, we did a lot. We had a great little life. They were coming over, we were cooking, they were, you know, they were staying with me more often than they weren't. And then everything just went to shit. Like everything was great. I had like the best from 2008 till the end of 2000, you know, to 2009, early 2010, early January. Things were so good. I was dating a nice guy. My job was great. I was making great money. I was excelling. I was exceeding, you know, I was getting promoted. I loved what I did. I was just in a really good place. I had broken up with the boyfriend again. That was back and forth, that idiot, for a long time. And then January, there was a big blizzard the week before. Oh, we went to Atlantic City. I took the kids to Atlantic City over the Christmas break. And I guess they must have gambled, but you know, they weren't 21. I know that because he died when he was 20, but I guess they gambled a little. And, you know, mostly they wanted to go to the restaurants and, you know, see a show and have a couple cocktails and just do their thing. And, you know, interesting enough, I didn't care if they drank, you know, because again, to me, it was normal, you know. If you're having a couple of drinks, you're not going to hurt anybody. You're looking down, see, I'm very insecure. You're looking down, like, oh, what's that? Um, but and then we would get in the car to go home in the morning from Atlantic City, and he reeked of the alcohol. I'm like, oh, Kenny, seriously. And then he was something like, you know, I lost fucking money, rah, rah, rah. And he's like, you know, I'm going to admit it. Oh, that was another thing. Wow, the memories will keep popping in. I'll talk for the rest of my life here. But apparently someone tried to sell him coke, and they took his money, and you know, some stupid, you know, my mother would always say, you know, nothing good ever happens after 1 a.m., you know, 2 a.m.
Yep,
Nothing
absolutely.
good ever happens. It's a fact. We all know this, you know. And then but we still had a great trip in spite of that. And he was nodding. I had a prescription for Xanax, and I rarely took them anymore because things, you know, I did not abuse them, clearly. I barely took them. And we were getting I, and I took one day, and I was like, wow, I could have sworn I had a lot more in here. And I just didn't think about it again because he was doing well, my son, you know. And my other one was still little. He was like about 13, 14 at that time. About he was 13. And we were leaving to go to Atlantic City, and my mom was like, she didn't like being in the car dry. You know, she was very nervous, just a nervous wreck, my mom in general. And she said, you know, can I have one of those Xanax? Because I hate it when you're driving and the kids make me nervous. And, you know, I just don't want to like start the trip in a bad way. And I'm like, of course, whatever. So I go upstairs, I get the prescription, there's two left in the bottle, three left maybe. And I'm like, okay, I know I haven't taken one in forever. And there was like, there was still at least half a prescription there, even though, and so I was really upset then. I'm thinking, my fucking kid, he took it, whatever. And I didn't want to start shit because when he got defensive, it was, oh, you're fucking wrong. I just wasn't in the mood to fight with him. And so when we were in Atlantic City, I said something to his girlfriend. I'm like, hey, I don't want to make a big deal with Kenny, but did he take any of my Xanax? And she said, no, no. I said, are you sure? She's like, listen, I would totally know. No fucking way. He's not doing that anymore. I promise you. So I was like, all right, whatever. And then she said to me, maybe it's Daniel, my little son. And I'm like, really? And he was just a little baby at that point. And he was a very, very immature, my younger son. As mature as my older one was, he was as immature. And a couple hours later, we go for dinner, and we're sitting at dinner, and I didn't even know what nodding meant at that time, really. But he was like, he was nodding at dinner. I remember. I'm like, Kenny, what's wrong with you? So but I didn't realize that he was on heroin. Using heroin, high from, I don't know what the fuck you call it, whatever. That he was high, fucked up, and whatever. After that, we go back upstairs, maybe before dinner. I don't remember the timeline. He came to me and he said, Mom, listen, I'm not gonna let Daniel get in trouble for something I did. He's like, I took your Xanax. He's like, I'm a drug addict. You know that, if it's in front of me, I'm going to take it, but I'm not going to, and I was just really proud that he admitted it. And, I mean, that he did. He had a problem with drugs. He couldn't do, again, like me. I can have a glass of wine. It's whatever Kenny did, he did big. If he had beer, he drank a case of beer. If he had pot, he would smoke. He was just excessive. And so then a week later, there was a big blizzard, whatever. They were at the house, and then we had plans to do something on Saturday, January 8th. I can't remember now. Maybe we're going to go to the city, whatever it was. And my son calls me at work Thursday afternoon, and I was like annoyed because I'm busy. He knows this, And he's like, Mom, how much money do I need? Because I get paid tomorrow and I want to just make sure I have enough money for Saturday. I'm like, honey, whatever. Just, I'm going to take care of it. Whatever you want to spend, for you guys, whatever crap you're going to buy, then just keep for that. I'll pay for everything else. And I kind of like rushed. I was annoyed, genuinely annoyed. And I think I had to have like a gynecological procedure, simple one that afternoon. And, yeah, and I wasn't well after work, so I think I went to sleep early. And then, like, he's going to borrow my mom's car, and I don't know, it was a whole, again, shit show. And then the next morning, I'm getting ready. I'm driving to work. It's about 7:30 in the morning, I guess. Yes, about 7:30. And my ex-husband called. I actually, for that night, I had made plans with the idiot ex yet again to try to get together and work things out. And my ex calls and he's like, something's wrong with Kenny. Something's really wrong. You need to get to my mother's house. I think it's too late. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's going on here? And he's like, just turn around and get to my mom's house. I'm trying to get out of the city. And then when I pulled up to my mother-in-law's house, and sure enough, 100 ambulances and cop cars, and the lights were all off. So I knew walking in that house, that's it. He was gone. And it was his alarm. They were upstairs, I guess, trying to still revive him, but he was gone when I got there, and the cops were still upstairs. And his alarm kept going off like every 10 minutes, like it was being snoozed or whatever. And like that's one of like the things I just remember. Like one of the PTS things is when when those phone alarms go, it's just like makes me fucking bananas. And it was my kid just died. I'm a fucking mess now. This is it. I mean, you know, I don't know, but with him, I always had a weird feeling when I went to work. I worked at an insurance company at one point 100 years ago when I was pregnant with my little one. And there was a woman there, and they said, listen, this woman, Eleanor, her son is a drug addict. He's a heroin addict, and he's on the streets, and he calls every once in a while begging for money, whatever. If he calls, you do not put him through to his mother. And then like, we had like little sweaters because the office was always cold. And she had this little yellow sweater, and she was an older woman. And it was her sweater from like the Cub Scouts when she was like a Cub Scout leader, and I remember thinking like, she was a Cub Scout, this boy, and she was a Cub Scout mom, how does this happen? I mean, I wasn't judgmental. And then all of a sudden, on my children's lives, I got a feeling just shot through me like a fucking spark. I knew my son Kenny wasn't going to live long. I knew he would die young, and I don't know what it was. And people are like, you're out of your fucking mind, but I'm telling you, it happened. And so sure enough, he didn't make it. And I think that's when the drinking, just became, really out of control. I started drinking every day, and bad. But then oh yeah, really drinking heavy. My mom got sick now. My father had just died. My kid is dead. Shit's a mess. And then my mom gets really sick. So I'm like, really, I'm just a disaster. And my mom passes away now too. So it's my father, my son, and my mom, all alcohol or drug related. My mother died of cirrhosis. My son died of a heroin overdose, and my father had died of, it was pancreatic cancer and whatever, a million other things. But, essentially, I think alcohol, played into that, and cigarettes, alcohol and cigarettes. So that's, I think, when my drinking got completely out of control once my son Kenny died. And, and I couldn't deal with my younger son. I just couldn't. I was afraid I was going to kill him too. Of course, I thought I killed him. I still blame myself. There's all these things. And I belong to a bereavement group where, there's how many of us that participate that have all lost children to, substance abuse disorder. And between us all, there's a couple of hundred. Between us all, there is not one thing someone could think that they could have done different to save their kid that we all haven't collectively already thought. Intellectually, I know I couldn't save him. He had to I didn't even know he was using, we didn't even know he was shooting heroin or using heroin. In fact, he didn't know how to cook it. He bought, I guess, what's called a hot shot, I think was what they called it, but a preloaded needle. And then some of my friends were like, he was fucking murder. I mean, it was really bad. It's just really bad. And then, like I said, with my younger son, I think at that point I was spending every weekend at the fucking cemetery. And I remember thinking I spend more time with my dead kid than I do with my living kid, because of I was just not well. And like I said, I was drunk. I would go to work every day and pick up 2 bottles of wine. And I would, of course, I don't know if you were an alcoholic or what your, drug of choice is, but, you got to make the rounds in the neighborhood. You don't want the guy knowing you're drinking 2 bottles every night. So I would stop here on Mondays. I go here on Tuesdays, and I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night. And I remember the one time at the wine store, the guy obviously knew my trick. And he's like, I understand why you don't just buy a case at once. You'd save a little money. This is ridiculous, And I'm like, well, I would drink too much then. He's like, oh, yeah, okay. And I was, who am I kidding here, But, when you're buying your liquor, your alcohol at different places, you have a problem. I knew it.
No,
I knew
I've done it.
How I knew. And so after my mom died, I bought a house with the boyfriend, the ex, which was, I was just all fucked in the head. It was the wrong decision, but I just, again, craving the love, you must love me. I need someone to love me and feel sorry for me and take care of me. And then this man who loved to have drinks too, like to go out for drinks and whatever, now starts fucking harassing me about my drinking like it's no one's business. And I get it. I was drinking too much, And again, I still at this point could not grasp what the fuck does he care when I drink? Why does it? I kept saying, how does this affect your life? It's I'm drinking at this point. I'm still mostly getting up and going to work on time and getting my work done, but it was it was starting to decline. So at that point, he just harassed the fuck out of me, quite frankly, and so I ended up going into rehab basically because to shut him up really. And I knew I had a problem, but I also knew I didn't want to quit yet. I had, I wasn't ready. I still wanted to drink. And so I did the rehab thing, whatever. I go, and it was a great program. Unfortunately, it didn't stick the first time. And I think I stayed sober for about 9 months. And this is like when we had first bought the house together. And oh no, we were renting a house first, and we moved into the other house during that period of time. And he's just an asshole. He was really, the first night I got home from rehab, my friend came over, my best friend, to check on me. He didn't lie. He was like anybody, except his mommy. Whatever it was, he had an empty water bottle full of vodka under the sink in the bathroom. I'm like, are you fucking me? I just went away to get sober for 90 days, whatever it was, or 30 days. It wasn't 90 days. I don't know where I got that. And you're fucking drinking the fry. I could smell it on them, I think. And people, I don't know why people think you can't smell vodka on people. I don't know where that started in life, but I can smell it across the fucking room. Um, so I don't know. Am I going over time? I don't know. What am I doing this right? You're supposed to be interviewing me. There's no interview. You're making me anxious. But
No,
that
because you're telling a good story. There's no. I only ask questions when I need something clarified. So let me ask you this: what made you want to get better?
well, 5 years to the day after my older son died, my younger son died. Also, he died of a combination of opiate intoxicate. No, he died of Xanax and heroin. Combination of Xanax and heroin. Exactly 5 years to the day after my oldest son died. And the night before, I was just, I was really, really, I was finally getting my act together. I mean, I was still drinking hard, but it wasn't, I was managing pretty much a little bit. I was still holding my shit together. And the night before the anniversary, I was working late because there's a homeless kid or homeless student in the district whose parents never showed up to pick them up. And, I just told my boss, yeah, I'm here. I'm working with budget. I'm working late anyway. So yeah, they can, I'll stick around until the parents show up. And her and I both did. And it was getting late. I was really tired and I didn't get home till like 9 o'clock that night. And the next day is the anniversary. And that's always just a fucking shit show for me. I don't do well. Um, and I call my son, my younger son, because he's staying at his dad's that night. And I'm like, just calling to check in, whatever. I'm like, hey, baby, I can hear in his voice, he's all kinds of fucked up. Not just smoking a little weed, fucked up. He's fucked up. And I'm like, I call his father back. I'm like, what the fuck is going on over there? What's happening? My son is all kinds of fucked up. It's like, and he's like, I'm like, check on him. You need to check on him. He does. He calls me back. Yeah, he's a little high. They're all smoking pot, whatever. And I'm like, whatever. I don't understand this. But I knew in my heart it wasn't pot. When he was doing those dabs. I'm not even sure what it is. I can't even remember. It was like some kind of oil with the pot. I don't remember, but it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah, no, you kind of light it with a blowtorch. It's a
Yeah,
whole, yeah.
that's it. He was doing those, and it was, he had a girlfriend that he was crazy about, and but that was starting to deteriorate towards the end too. They were young. Oh, well, he got her pregnant in the summer during prom. I think he knocked her up actually, and then he called me, and I was away, and it just, and he was a cutter, the little one. He was a cutter, and he was cutting, and he was cutting bad, and he was old to be cutting. He was 19. That's old. That's usually a younger kid thing, to my knowledge, like a young teenager, young adolescent. And so the guy I was with at the time, I told him, like, I should go get him. I said, I'm fucking shot, man. I am so tired. I got to deal with tomorrow. And I just went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night, like I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, I woke up, he woke up too. And I'm like, this is, something's wrong. I should have gotten Daniel. I don't, he's like, just go back to sleep. It's fine. It's fine. So of course I do. And I wake up, getting ready, having my coffee. I go on my Facebook and I just write 5 years. That's it. Meaning my son has been gone for 5 years. 5 minutes later, my ex calls. I see his number come up and I'm like, motherfucker, you've got to be. I'm like, nope. He's like, Daniel took something, you need to get to the hospital. Same fucking story. But this time I had to go to the hospital, instead of the house. So I get to the hospital and, when he said to me on the phone, the doctors are still working on him. I don't know what's going on. And I knew. I knew he was lying to me because I knew I had to get there and he just didn't want me to probably kill myself on the way over there. And I get there and I go to the emergency room, where he was, and I said, I'm Daniel Grimm's mom, and then, oh, okay, come with us. And they were like way too, you know what I mean? That's not nice of the emergency room. Hold on, wait, this is what they usually get. But they brought me to his room and he was gone. I knew because the drape was pulled. And my mother-in-law and my ex-husband were sitting in the room. And I mean, he had the fucking intubator thing down his throat. This is like right before Narcan was like really kicking in. Just like with, like a couple of months later, it was like they're required to have it on ambulances and the police and everybody else. And Also, this was 2 months before where I lived. They made it a law that if you sold somebody the drugs that got them, that killed them, what they died from, it's considered manslaughter or murder. I forget. I think it was manslaughter. I don't know if it's changed since then. But he was done. He was gone. It's cold, fucking ice cold. And that was it. That was just the end of it. I don't think I ever took a sober breath after that. That's when I got fucked up and suicidal. Um, many again. I used to laugh that I'm too fucking stupid to even kill myself correctly because every time I wake up in the fucking emergency room or in the rehab, wherever they're gonna put me, the psych ward, a couple of times, more than one time, because what was the fucking point? What was the fucking point? My parents are dead and my children are dead. I'm all fucking alone in this world. And I blamed myself terribly because I didn't give them a proper upbringing. And I didn't go to check on my son that night. So that was it. I was just fucking done with life. And I couldn't go back to work. I went back to work very briefly after that, and I wasn't really functioning very well. And the district I was working for did they had a forensic psychologist evaluate me, which I know this just from my own whatever, but who came back saying she's incapable of working at this point in time, even on a part-time basis. And I know because they paid for it, that's the response they wanted. And I'm like, what? I didn't care. I didn't fucking care. And so they send me paperwork. We're letting you go based on this. And they said, they had a big meeting where I was basically going to get fired. I showed up at that meeting, fucking shit-faced drunk from the night before. I don't even think I'd slept the night before, really. And my son's younger girlfriend, I'm still really close to her, had to drive me there because I was pretty much, still drunk. I could barely, see straight. I'm sure I looked it, like I said, knowing now, what I remember, and they basically told me that I could resign with the intention of retiring to collect my pension, through because I 22 years in, that I would retire and take my disability pension. And sure enough, they turned me down for the disability, not once, twice, Social Security, same fucking thing. I'm out of work now at this point, broke, went through all my savings, didn't give a fuck. Now I had to take in a roommate because I couldn't pay the rent. I mean, I went through whatever money, my parents didn't leave much, but I went through the inheritance, just surviving, paying the bills, and, saying, fuck it, I'm going to Mexico for the weekend. I don't give a fuck. I didn't, because I didn't care. And then, so she was giving me money for the rent, and this woman, kind of a friend of mine, an acquaintance, and I can't pay the bills. I have nothing coming in. This is right before COVID hit, and I was working a good job at a pool company, and I was it's a lame little job, and not that my father always told me work equals money. It's nothing is beneath me, but this guy was a psychopath. He was a crazy person. Now, I worked in education, so I'm used to working with educated people, professional people, and being treated as such. This guy was just a fucking nutcase. I know he was an alcoholic, and I know he was in AA, but I think he would be what you would call like a white knuckle, maybe, I don't know, or a dry drunk, because he was one miserable SOB. I mean, he would yell at me, and he'd, yell and scream at me if I like fucked up a ticket for, to go fix someone's pool. I'm like, are you kidding? Not used to this kind of treatment. And again, I'm all fucked up. I'm still drinking. And well, that ended poorly because I think whatever he said, why aren't you doing, like, he wanted me to follow up with the county on like a permit, whatever, the town. And I did. And the guy was like, well, it's not ready yet. It's not gonna be ready, And then he like was texting me, he's like yelling, like saying, well, that's your job to do it. I'm like, what do you fucking want from me? I said, what do you want from me? I can't make this guy do his fucking job. What can I tell you? He's not doing his job. I'm doing mine. And that was it. Then he saw, then it was like, well, maybe you're not ready. And then when he came back to the office, we had a fucking screaming fight, and I was, whatever. I'm like, and you know what? I was trying not to cry because I cry when I get angry, and I'm a crier. And I wasn't gonna let this motherfucker see me break down. I'm thinking I lost 2 fucking kids. This guy's not taking me down, And then, and he was also running his business. He did half of his work cash, not reporting hundreds and thousands of dollars to the IRS. And he knew I knew this, and he knew I was, pissed off and angry, and he was terrified I was going to report him. I didn't, because what the fuck do I care at that point? It's done, you know. Um, so that was the end of 19, I guess. So then again, now I'm not working, still drinking, whatever little money I had left was gone to alcohol, and then COVID hit. So I'm still using this chick's money to basically buy my alcohol and cigarettes every day, because that's what you do when you're about to be homeless. You have $1,500. Instead of paying that towards rent, I gave a couple hundred towards the $2,000 rent I owed, and basically spent the rest on cigarettes and wine. Because I'm really bright that way. I really know how to prioritize and budget my money. But then COVID hit, and my one friend was like, "Well, why don't you try to get the money? Everyone was getting the money. I forget what it was called, the whatever." And I'm like, I worked for 6 months for that fucking idiot. I was mostly paid off the books. They're not going to approve me. Well, they did, and I ended up getting like $8,000, which was good because I did catch myself up on the rent, and a couple of bills. But my car payment was now, I didn't have any credit cards at the time because I didn't have any money. But again, once that was caught up, I got the money every week for the unemployment and the extra money they were giving us. I'm not great with my memory's really bad. So then it was like the end of that summer when, my one best friend had stopped drinking because she, kind of realized she had a really big problem. She was doing the same shit, 2 bottles of wine a night when her husband was at work, and then she would clean everything up and go to bed. And, he had no fucking clue. He's French, though. He thinks he doesn't believe in alcoholism. It's fine. He's French. I'm kidding, but not really. But so now she's not drinking, and we would go out for dinner that summer. I lived on the beach. They would come to the beach a lot, and all I would be doing is looking at my watch through dinner, thinking this fucking dinner better be over by 7 o'clock so I can get to that wine store before I go home. Because we weren't drinking then in solidarity for her, and she would come to me, and she's like a sister to me. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for this person. She has literally saved my life, more than once. I'd been at the hospital every time I was in the psych ward, she's just the most amazing human I've ever encountered. And she would come to spend the day on the beach with me. And it's, again, getting to be that time. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm like, and then I'd make up an excuse that she had to leave so I could get, I'd follow right behind her, get to that wine store, calling them. This is like 5 to 8, saying, I'm on my way. Hold my bottles. At that point, I'm using the same wine store every day because I didn't give a fuck anymore. Now, again, kids are dead. What do I care? And it just got bad. It got really, now I'm a sneak and I'm a liar, and I can't, I'm not paying my bills, and I'm using this money for drinking, and I looked like shit. I think, forget what maybe Mother's Day, whatever. I was like, my friend said I was great. I had, they thought I was dying, and I also think I felt like it. And I don't know. I finally was just like, I can't fucking do this anymore. You know what? I was tired. The classic, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was genuinely, that's how I felt. Like, I can't do this. I feel like shit all the time. I can't get a job because, first of all, COVID, and, no one, I'm too drunk to even interview. I'm drinking, basically there's no night or day in my world because I didn't work for so long. All I did was, cry about my kids and try to numb myself. And I did a good job of it. And then I don't know what, something just hit, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't, they would not like this. This would not be cool with my kids, and my kids adored me. They worshiped me. We like we had our issues like everybody else, but I was very close to my kids, my boys. And so I don't know. I just decided that's it. I'm going, and my one best friend set it all up, got me in there, and it was this, I think October 20th, 2020, right middle of COVID. And I don't know. I wanted it. I was ready this time. It wasn't like the first time for the idiot boyfriend. This time I'm like, I don't want it anymore. I simply didn't want it. And I did
You
it.
were motivated.
I was motivated. Yeah. I worked fucking hard in rehab, and I came out, and again, it was COVID. We're all on lockdown still. I went into a day treatment program, but we did it remote like this. And at this one little place, again, my best friend set up for me that kind of did everything in one shot. You know, it was you got your psychiatrist with your medications would be there, your therapy, your group therapy, and your individual therapist would be there. I know I'm going to shut up now. Time to go.
No, no. What do you mean?
It's 5:40. I don't know what your schedule is.
No, keep going.
Can I just heat up my coffee? Well, I can walk it. I need more coffee. Um,
So tell me about once you got out of rehab.
like I said, when I came out of rehab, it was still the middle of COVID, and I think I've also been on antidepressants for many, many years since probably before, right around the time my son started doing drugs, and they changed my meds around a million times through all those years, and then. When I was drinking hardcore, it doesn't, the antidepressants no longer work, so my one friend would tell me that I get psychotic. I would get psychotic when I was drinking because of mixing it up. And, maybe I was, I don't know, I don't remember. Um, but she's a little dramatic anyway. But when I came out, they had finally gotten my meds straight. I was a month without, drinking. I felt better. I'm sure I looked a little better, because, I wasn't gray and hungover all the time. And I think I remember that was the best feeling to this minute, to this day. Waking up without a hangover is like, oh my God, it's just, I'm still blown away by it. And of course, like any other respectable alcoholic, I denied getting hangovers. Oh no, I'm not, I'm fine. I'm fine. I always like have my eyes on fire like this. And I didn't bomb it, but I felt like I wanted to. Um, so anyway, I went to this one place that was a combined treatment center, and because first of all, I'm on Medicaid, no money, COVID, so they weren't charging people during COVID because I think so many people were in trouble with COVID. The substance abuse really the numbers really increased with people drinking. I know a couple of my oldest son Kenny's friends overdosed and died during that time. More than one. Um, and again, for whatever reason, I didn't want to live that way anymore. And I mean, I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to do it, because even to this day, I'm a little weird because I've been drinking, alcoholically essentially my entire adult life. And I don't know how to, even like, when my kids were young, when we go out on the weekends, I would be drinking, on the weekends. We used to call it the pump and dump. You go out for dinner, you have a couple glasses of wine, you come home, you pump all that milk out, and you're good to go next day for nursing. I never got well, again, not relative, but I still at the time I still it was a weird time because there was no socializing except through Zoom. You couldn't see anybody, which was good because it kind of kept me to myself where I wasn't put in a position where anybody was going to be drinking. Um, this is a bad idea. This is inside. Okay, sorry. So again, there was like nothing to do socially anyway. So the drinking wasn't like in front of my face, so I wasn't being triggered. My friend, none of my other friend who quit drinking before I did. We're the only two that drank excessively. The rest of our friends were well. One of our friends is in San Francisco, but we don't see her that often, so that her drinking doesn't affect us. But our other friends can like go to dinner and have a glass of wine and not finish it. Go figure, right? What's the point of having it? So, and then after COVID, was lifting up, I was, again, I took the program really serious, really, really serious, my outpatient. And I'm a note taker and I constantly read my notes and I got a big book and I'm not a big AA person, not for any other reason and I just don't, I'm not a group person. I don't like to be around people, a lot of people. I have really bad anxiety. And I also can't quite grasp the idea of no crosstalk. Like, what do you mean I can't talk and say what I want and interrupt you and tell you how I can fix you? I struggle a lot with that because I have, I'm a big mouth. I have too much to say. Um, and I had a therapist who was just, I think she was like finishing her internship, and then she got hired full time there, and she was wonderful. She young, which I was like a little like, I'm not so sure about you. She's like a baby, but she was fresh out of school, and she was wonderful. I was her first full-time patient, her first real patient. I mean, she got the like fucking therapy lottery winner with me, right? I'm like, I got two dead kids. I'm all kinds of fucked up. I'm an alcoholic. I'm this and that. I have family so the therapy really, for the first time ever, I was being honest. I wasn't lying, which I always did in therapy because, of course, I want my therapist to like me. You must like me. You can't judge me because once I feel like there's a relationship there, that's it. I'm going to lie to you. Um, and and then I also began with my bereavement group about this. Well, couple months before that, but now I was sober. And as things started opening up, they knew my journey. I told them getting in recovery. And as part of the group, we do speaking engagements sometimes. When we're called the Beating Hearts. I'm trying to think if I have any out here. And we make little beads for after we hear of somebody overdosing and passing away. Someone from the group would go to the wake, and in a little envelope. You're gonna kill me. I keep getting up. I know. Anyway, when I got involved with the bereavement group, they really didn't know my story. They knew my story about my children. And, again, overachiever, they have one dead child. I got two, I win. But, so we would do a lot of it. Like sometimes they would go to sober homes and speak, and they were going to jails and speak to the people, in certain programs in the prisons. And they were actually going to the center where I went to my rehab once. And I was like, I'm going, and because I knew how they worked the program there. I knew what went on, and I knew I would connect with the people there because I'm one of them, And apparently when I tell my story in a forum, I guess like that, I'm pretty good at it, like, again, I was like, okay, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm an alcoholic. I was like, whatever. I was like, oh, wrong meeting, right? Ha ha ha. And again, I think, a lot of the moms go up there and they tell about their kid, and they cry and they sob. And I know that affects people, but I also know from experience that's not going to happen to me. No one thinks no one thinks they're going to die and their mom is going to be sad. But I think my story and the woman who ran the group also found, but she put me in at a certain time when she felt they were losing people. And, everything I've gone through, losing my children, becoming a raging alcoholic, and now in recovery is pretty fucking unique, where I went from literally trying to kill myself, drink myself to death. And, now I'm in a position where, I never grieved my kids. I just drank, I never felt anything. And now I'm on this huge, I must feel things, I'm trying to, it's overwhelming. But when I would go to the sober houses or the rehabs and tell my story, I knew I made an impact because they were up clapping and cheering, like they were giving me, asking for my number for when they got out, because they could relate to me, on some, not just because of my kids having issues, my kids being, dead, but because, I had so much adversity and I got through it. I got recovered, so that's been, I think, my favorite thing to do since then, is speaking up. And now I'm here in Florida and I'm trying to like find, and that's how I ended up finding you guys, just because I need to have contact with, where I think I can tell my story, where I'm a voice, be heard, be their voice really. And yeah, that's it. Wrap it up.
So, did you have anything else you want to add in?
I just would like to mention that tomorrow is, I think it's international or national, but it's Overdose Awareness Day. It's a day to, remembrance of those we've lost to the epidemic, the heroin, the opioid, and the substance deaths. And it's a day to, the main goal is we're trying to erase the stigma that, they're not my kid. It's, and it's opioids and heroin are affecting an entirely new generation now. It's middle class white kids. in from nice neighborhoods. And again, I know I've been judged. It's funny because I know if I ever, I don't tell my story a lot because I don't want people to know that I work with, especially down here now. I don't, not that not that I'm ashamed of it, but I just don't want it to be who I am. It defined me for a very, defined me for over 12 years. And I can't let that be who I am anymore. I'm still a human. I'm still a woman. I'm still, a professional. I'm getting back to, I got a job down here that I absolutely love. It's in the university in Miami. It's back to my roots in education. And I want to be that now again, and I wasn't myself for so long. And I wouldn't be able to be fighting back as I am if I didn't find recovery. I would have died. I would have ended up dead sooner than later. But again, I'm all over the place. But tomorrow again is Overdose Awareness Day, and our color is purple. And if you could put it up um, on your Facebooks or your Instagrams, whatever your social media is, and just to bring awareness to it. Um, and if anybody that's gone through it, maybe give a little prayer or think about them and their families, because we're all somebody. Everyone's someone's child, and I need to speak for them because they can't.
No, they can't, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap up. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Did you have a good time?
I did.
Got to tell
Thank
your
you.
story. It feels
Yeah,
good. It feels good to get it out sometimes.
it does. And interestingly, when I first started speaking at when I first went to the rehab to speak and tell the story, my story, I was a disaster afterwards. I mean, it really affected me. It triggered me into a dark place for a couple of days a week. And again, my friends, well, you can't do this anymore. At what cost? This is your own mental health. You're giving up to this. And I'm stronger than I realize. And if I hear one more person tell me you're the strongest person I ever met, well, fuck you. I don't have a choice. Do I? I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be strong. I was just with the hand I was dealt. But the more I've done so, telling my story, it's starting to help me heal now. It doesn't trigger me like it used to. I'm starting to come to terms, acceptance, almost, that my kids are gone. And I think, talking about it helps. And it's going to raise awareness that this is fucking for real.
Yeah. Again, I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
All right. Well, sit tight for me. And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can also check us out at Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, and Tumblr. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you find plenty of free literature and all different types of resources. So I hope you enjoyed today, and until next time.